in Palestine. First, let me just, for my apologies, I am the pastor of Justice and Formation at First Baptist Church in Jamaica Plains, so we Baptists tend to go a little longer. And then I want to say thank you to my wife, who I have loaned to you all for a little while.
Nice of you.
Merci, merci.
Who is a towering theologian and preacher in her own right. She is a descendant of a group of people called the Maroons, who were never in bondage in Jamaica. And so you are privileged to have her, and I trust that you will treat her well. And then I want to thank my colleagues here. I see Ali, who's our co-leader on the delegation here from Yale Divinity School, the UCC pastor. I think that's Brother Mike back there from the Interfaith Peace-Builders, who co-led, co-facilitated our delegation. And then my roommate, Rabbi Joe. I kept him on the straight and narrow.
He kept you on the straight.
And then my dear sister, Dr. Alice, who's a long distance runner in this work. If you have not met her on Broken Promises, would be quite important for you to do so.
It's for sale at the end.
Sweet. Dr. Paula, my other new best friend, who works, who heads all of the Mideast Studies programs for the University of Massachusetts, and then her husband, who tags along with us every now and then in Palestine. I want to say this thank you to all of them. As I'm going to frame, but I think it's important for you to fully understand who you have in the room. These are folks who have made, at great risk to themselves, have done this work. At the risk of being ostracized from the community that produced them, the house of their mothers and their fathers could have rejected them. But they made a moral and ethical decision to commit themselves to a struggle bigger than themselves and older than themselves. And they are quite courageous in that. And I am humbled to call them my friend. Secondly, I want you to understand that we sang This Little Light of Mine in every city we went to in Palestine. And though in instances where people didn't understand the words, they did not speak English, but there was something that visceral happened to them, and they identified to the songs of these people called African in the context of an American empire, who could do nothing else oftentimes but sing a song. And that they identified deeply with these songs because something was at work. And so while my colleagues have given you pictures and images, facts and figures, I want to speak to something more visceral, something more guttural, the urtext of oppression. For everywhere I have been in the world, it has been interesting to me the way in which people, darker hues, have identified with the struggles of African Americans, but there's something powerful about the language and lenses of these people called African who suffered under the American empire, but never let the empire have the last word. And it's that those people, out of that struggle, Dorothy Cotton, one of the leaders of the SCLC, the only female staff on Dr. King's organization, who Institute called us to go to Palestine with her, who engaged in popular education with the great Setna Clark and others. When black folks were, they created literacy tests. They trained them in literacy tests, and they saw literacy as a form of liberation. She was a key leader in that. And then there was a great Vincent Harding, who's one of his claims to fame is that he wrote half of Dr. King's anti-Vietnam speech, the first half. And in that speech, he lays bare King's own moral witness and consciousness, helping to push and mentor King as a Mennonite mentor to the civil rights movement. He was there with us. Then there's the great Richard Deese, founder, one of the leading figures of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, who had worked along struggles in South Africa as well as here in the U.S. These are the framers of our gathering. And so it is out of that tradition and out of that struggle of nonviolent revolution in the context of America that broke the back of American apartheid. It is that struggle and that is the tradition that we entered in that called us to Palestine. Remember, I mentioned to you something visceral, a kind of urtext. And so one of the conversations as we were gathering together in our first meeting, our meeting right before we got on the plane and figure out how we were going to sneak in the country. Of which I had it easy, because Dorothy Cotton she's in her 80s, and so she's in a wheelchair, so I was just her son. And we were just going to Israel to see where Jesus walked. Me and my mom. Now, I think they went through all of their bags and everything else, but me and my mama, we just wanted to see where Jesus walked. So when we were gathering in that first gathering, one of the things I said to one of my colleagues is that, my African-American colleague, what is going to be interesting to you, though I have never been to the region, but I've been to Palestine, I've been to Paris in the riots of 2005, I was in London during the riots of 2011. I didn't start them, I went out and in Mexico City during the riots of 2004, that in those contexts, everywhere I've been in the world, there's something familiar about the oppression. So as a person of African descent, I enter into the space, I say, oh, I know this. This looks familiar, viscerally. I could feel it. I knew what it meant to have your body policed and your knowledge disciplined. And so in the context of Palestine, so I said to my colleague, Lucas Johnson, a Black Baptist preacher who is formerly on the board of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. So what's going to be interesting to you is not what you don't know, but how familiar it is to you. And so everywhere in the villages in Palestine, they would say, we are sand niggas. And I say, I understand that. I know what you mean. There was something about the repression that Palestinian people experience in that context. And then the other piece, and so it is in that context, that broader sense of the African-American freedom struggle, its relationship to the suffering of the Palestinian people and the cause of struggle of these people. And then the third point that I want to make is around the question of how music and joy touched the lives of these people. Everywhere we went, we sang, and everywhere we went, the people wept. And they said, thank you for singing our songs and telling our truth. And that they fundamentally understood the context of what the American struggle meant. And just like in America, there were courageous white brothers and sisters, disproportionately Jewish, struggling on the behalf of African Americans in the Jim Crow South. There were courageous Jewish brothers and sisters who struggled against the occupation. And we never want to lose sight of them. We always want to raise their names. And we always want to lift them up. Not as a high form of moral standard, because this is a struggle that all humans should be engaged in, but we want to lift them up because, again, there's personal sacrifices that they make in the context of their own families, their own religious traditions. And so in that context, these brothers, among them, the anarchists against the wall, Brother Cody, beast of an organizer. Coming all the way up. Where did we meet them at when they met us at Ayed's house? Were we in Bellini?
Boudres.
We was in Boudres. So they come traveling 2 and 3 hours to come and be with these people, to sit in their yards and to break bread with them, and to hear of their struggles, to know their names. These were people, they weren't just, it wasn't a tourist. They weren't progressive pilgrims, so to speak, lefty tourists. They were deeply engaged in these people. They knew them. They knew their names. They knew their children. They knew their joys and sorrows. They knew their birthdays. That is a sign of struggle. That is a sign of commitment. Are you willing to learn people's songs and struggles? We can be all angry and mad, and we can be disgusted by the situation in Israel, and we can be furiously angry with the Palestinian terrorists who are engaged in acts of violence against property and people. We can be deeply angered, but I challenge you, and what we learn, I think that one of the deepest lessons we learn is the sense of joy of a people. Can you have joy? My grandmother used to sing the song. She had a 3rd grade education with the most sophisticated philosopher of the 20th century. She used to say, this joy that I have, the world wouldn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. In this struggle, where we have the joy of the Palestinian people, where we laugh and where we joke, where we mock our situation, because we fundamentally understand that when the material conditions say no, we still say yes.
John Paul Sartre raises the question, why go on? My grandmother responds to him, saying, why not? So that kind of joy that these people have, the elegance and the love and the dignity and the commitment. One of the funniest things that we kept consistently hearing when we heard pictures was Facebook. They want to know. So I'm not that I wasn't already on the FBI's watch list, but I got so many Palestinians on my Facebook page now. Facebook, because they want the pictures to be shared, and they want to know, and they want to be connected to an outer world. And everywhere we went, they said to us, tell our story. And so I'm honored to say that we're keeping part of our commitment to them this morning. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.